Funding for New Mexico in Focus is provided by viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, House Speaker Javier Martinez previews the final weeks of this year's legislative session as uncertainty from Washington looms.
We don't know what's happening at the federal level. We don't know what Trump's going to do to impact our day-to-day lives, but New Mexico will be ready.
And paid family and medical leave may finally get their day at the Roundhouse, but not without a fight and some serious changes. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm executive producer Jeff Proctor. We're going to spend a lot of time in the Capitol, where legislators have just 2 more weeks to send bills to the governor's desk. New Mexico sits alone among U.S. states with its insistence on not paying lawmakers. For years, Common Cause New Mexico has called for that to change. Coming up later in today's show, senior producer Lou DeVizio asks Mason Graham, the organization's state policy director, why he believes voters should get to decide whether state elected officials draw a salary. But first, a deeper conversation than most of what's floating around out there with House Speaker Javier Martinez. Politics correspondent Gwyneth Doland and Martinez talk all things Roundhouse related. The budget, a paid family leave bill that narrowly passed the House after significant revisions, and a series of bills aimed at overhauling the state's long-troubled child welfare system that could draw out Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's veto pen. Here's Gwyneth with the Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We are in the downward stretch of the session. What are you most proud of accomplishing so far?
I'm proud of the work we've done around public safety and behavioral health. It's been a long time coming. For those New Mexicans whose families are afflicted by addiction, by behavioral health problems, we've built a system that I think that they're going to be proud of, and that they can be able to access affordably and throughout the state. I've always said no one should live more than 50 miles from a treatment center or from a behavioral health service, and so I'm proud that we're well underway. In addition to that, a lot of the good work we've done on affordability. We don't know what's happening at the federal level. We don't know what Trump's going to do to impact our day-to-day lives, but New Mexico will be ready with regard to grocery prices, with regard to gas prices, making sure that New Mexicans of all walks of life have affordability in their lives.
I'm glad you brought up President Trump this week. He addressed a joint session of Congress. He said a lot of things that were probably designed to make your head explode, right?
Yeah.
But on the substance of what Trump has done, he's actually moved more quickly and more aggressively than a lot of people thought that he would. Obviously, New Mexico does depend on federal money. We have a lot of federal employees, a lot of government programs. Have you done enough here to prepare for the pace and the breadth of his cuts?
Look, we have been preparing for years. We have put a lot of money away in trust funds to ensure that New Mexicans have access to critical services like healthcare, education, childcare, et cetera. And so we're ready. Now, having said that, President Trump completely ignored the elephant in the room, and that's inflation. That's the high cost of living for Americans all across the country, but including New Mexicans. And so the New Mexico legislature will continue to work to make life more affordable for our families, to ensure that they can keep more of their hard-earned money, so that we can be better prepared if Trump continues down this destructive path.
So in terms of affordability and inflation, paid family medical leave, after years of debate, the House passed a bill that has a different structure than we're looking at, but the Republicans have criticized it, saying it's a small business killer. I mean, this is going to cost businesses money. What is your argument for why this is the time to do this now, based on the affordability argument you just made?
Look, we came up with an elegant New Mexico solution to a New Mexico problem. We pulled out parental leave out of paid family medical leave, which was the largest uptake in the prior iterations of the bill. And that is now completely paid for through the Early Childhood and Care Department budget. So that's a tax that businesses will not have and that employees will not have. The only remaining part is the medical leave piece, which is 6 weeks, and that is a very small fraction of a contribution made by both employers and employees. On average, a company that hires workers at minimum wage will pay roughly $30 per year per employee That is almost nothing. That's less than the cost of a cup of coffee. Having said that, New Mexico small businesses, businesses with under 5 employees, are completely exempt. So the Republican criticism is really baseless. It doesn't really have, it doesn't hold water. And I'm proud of this House for passing what, again, I call an elegant New Mexican solution to a New Mexico problem.
5 Democrats voted against it. Are you expecting that it will receive some pushback from more Democrats in the Senate?
I don't think so. I mean, this is really a unicorn, if you will. It's as close to a perfect bill as you can get, right? We've got an early childhood and care department with a budget well over $700 million a year, and that budget will only increase because of the funding mechanisms that fund that department. Now, when we're talking about what's best for a newborn, what's best for a newborn is to be with their mom and or their dad and or their parent for those first 12 weeks of life. Science tells us that that is the best in terms of the development of that child. We've ensured through this bill that parents can do that if they so choose to.
And the way it looks now, it's direct payments. You're just going to cut checks of $3,000 a month for a few months.
That's right.
Why is direct cash assistance the best way to support new families?
Because we've got to trust families, right, with their own money. You heard my Republican colleagues on the floor during the budget debate. They were wanting to give all of us $600 a year. It's the same concept. We are trusting moms and dads with their money by making the payment of $3,000 a month for those first 3 months of life. Now they can choose to, pay for a nanny. They can choose to stay at home with the baby. That is the beauty of this of this proposal, right? That's why truly it is a unicorn. Direct cash assistance for these families to be able to stay home with their babies for those first 12 weeks of life.
And is there any accountability in the program if they want to spend it on shoes and drugs?
Well, look, I mean, that's assuming that parents don't want what's best for their child, right? And that's just not the case. That argument doesn't hold water. There is a lot of accountability in the program, so the parent has to be working, right? The Early Childhood and Care Department and Workforce Solutions will come up with the rules to ensure that the program operates with full transparency. And I've got every amount of faith in the world in New Mexicans and their ability to raise their kids.
Another thing that Trump talked about in his speech this week was immigration. He has bragged quite a bit about cracking down on the border, stemming the flow of migrants, ramping up deportations. Democrats obviously are in the exact opposite headspace. And you guys have made it a priority to protect immigrants and U.S. citizens in New Mexico here. Do you think you'll have done enough?
Look, as an immigrant myself, I know how important it is that our families, the people that we worship next to at church, the people whose kids go to our kids' schools, the people who sometimes work for us in our small businesses and in our large businesses, that we protect them and that we ensure that we protect their dignity as well. Trump's mass deportations threats are a direct threat to the New Mexico economy. The oil and gas industry, one of the most important, if not the most important industry in this state, depends heavily on migrant labor. If Trump does in fact move forward with mass deportation plans, as he has expressed so many times, it will have a direct impact on that industry, which will have a direct impact on our budget. Same thing with agriculture. We all love Hatch Green Chili. We just passed a bill declaring August Hatch Green Chili Month every single year. Guess who picks that chili? It is migrant labor.
Moving from immigration to public safety, the governor said she wanted public safety bills on her desk. You delivered, but there's still a lot of disagreement about whether it went too far or not far enough. What's left that you want to achieve on public safety?
Look, there's no silver bullet for public safety. This is something we House Democrats have been working diligently on now for several years. This is another step forward. Getting those competency laws tightened up the way we did is a huge step forward, particularly for those people who have behavioral health problems. But also the other pieces of that package that we pass are steps forward. Now, moving forward, over the next 20 plus days that are left in the session, there's a lot of work that continues, that we will continue to do, including around juvenile justice. The D home in Albuquerque is full. Right, there was a report that came out just a couple weeks ago. They cannot take any more children. Question is, what kind of services are children getting at the D home? And if you ask around, it's hard to actually get a straight answer. So House Democrats will be proposing a package of support systems for those young people and for their families to ensure that as kids get involved in the criminal justice system, that we can divert them and that we can remediate what's happening to them. But most importantly, prevention, right? Prevention is key. And that's why we will be making investments through the next 20 days of the session to make sure that kids have access to those preventative services that they need in order to keep them from gun violence, in order to keep them from getting suspended from school, in order to keep them from committing the crimes that we see often.
Now, the governor, a fellow Democrat, we sat with her for a long time in her office a few weeks ago, and this is not what she said, right? She made a really powerful argument that we need to get tough on juvenile offenders who are accused of really serious crimes, murder, stuff like that. And she said, we've got to stop the cycle of violence. We've got to pull them out of there. We need to get tougher on them. How confident are you that your plans will make it to her desk and get signed?
Look, the fact of the matter is prosecutors have the ability to prosecute these cases, right? Now, to pass more laws simply for the sake of passing laws that are not going to be enforced, that's not what we're in the business of. We're in the business of solving problems. That's why I keep refocusing ourselves on prevention and ensuring that these kids get the services that they need so that they get better. Right? No 14-year-old deserves to be locked up and the key thrown away.
Even if they've, committed murder?
Well, there are laws already in the books with regard to murder and that we can hold those kids accountable. Right? Now, the question is, what more do we need to do to keep that 14-year-old from committing murder, right? And tougher laws, I'm not sure is going to be what solves the issue, but more investments and a greater focus on prevention and diversion is, proven in criminal justice systems. Now, the other thing I'll add is the CYFD system is completely broken, right? And I always ask the question, why is a 14-year-old running around at 3 a.m. on a school night shooting guns? Where are the parents? Where is the family? And if the parents and the family are not involved, where is the state to make sure that we're keeping those kids safe? And as we know, CYFD has been broken for a long time. That's why House Democrats, just a couple of days ago, unanimously passed a package of pretty strong CYFD reform bills to ensure that those kids are kept safe. If we can keep those kids safe, we keep the rest of the community safe.
And I wanted to ask you about that next because the governor is not on board, right? Yeah. I've got all of these press releases in my inbox from CYFD. The secretary is peeved. The governor is not on the same page. She doesn't like your approach. She said the CYFD secretary said the proposals for an independent Office of the Child Advocate has conflict of interest problems, all sorts of other stuff. If she vetoes some of these ideas on CYFD, do you feel like you have the coalition to override them?
I mean, the votes were unanimous on the floor of the House. And I predict that it will be similar or close to similar in the Senate. I really do hope that the governor signs those bills, or at least I hope that she or that they attempt to make the bills maybe more palatable to them. The fact of the matter is the status quo is not working. And I also want to be clear, this is not on this governor's lap. This has been happening for a long time, long before she came into office. This is an issue that this state has been dealing with for a long time. And as long as I'm sitting in the speaker's chair, I will no longer tolerate one more child being lost to abuse, being lost to neglect, right? And those are the worst case scenarios, right? Now, some of those kids survive, and then they go on to commit crime later in life as adults, right? It's a vicious cycle. We've got to put a stop to it. Status quo is not working. We're going to work hard to ensure that every New Mexico kid is kept safe.
There has been a lot of change here. I mean, you as speaker, there's a lot of new leadership. You've got a really different, younger, more liberal caucus. You've got a huge majority, and majority women, majority people of color. You've also made some changes in recent years, adding staff for lawmakers. There's a bid up here now to force lobbyists to disclose a lot of information about what they're working on. And for years, people have said that the lobbyists are the most powerful people in this building, right? They've got the most experience, the most understanding of how things work, and they don't have to tell you who they're spending money on, who they're lobbying and what for. Is that going to happen?
We moved the bill yesterday, ensuring that lobbyists have more disclosure. I think it's going to move. I expect it to move in the Senate. But look, you're absolutely right. This House is the most diverse legislative chamber in the entire country. Most of us are people of color. Most of us are women. Some of us are immigrants, first generation. And a lot of us are under the age of 50, right? Some of us are under the age of 45. We've got a couple that are under the age of 30. We are excited. We are ready to lead. We are ready to take New Mexico to the next level, right? And one thing that I think your viewers should know, if they don't already know, is these are volunteer jobs, unpaid jobs. We're the last remaining unpaid citizen legislature in the entire country. The fact that you have so many of us who are balancing jobs and family time with this work should fill New Mexicans with a whole lot of pride and excitement, because we're in it for all the right reasons. We're in it because we love this state and we know that we can do better, right? And so as long as I have air in my lungs, and I know I speak for my caucus when I say this, we're going to keep working to modernize this building, to modernize this system, so that more people like us can actually afford to run and serve in these positions.
So are you going to pass a bill that would set up paying lawmakers?
We have been working on that, and we would love to pass that, right? Because it really restricts who is able to serve. For a long time, it was mostly retired people or independently wealthy people. Like I said, there's a crew of us who have made the sacrifice to be here, even though we're not paid. But we know that once we get a full-time paid legislature, it opens up the opportunity to people that are a lot smarter than us and a lot more hardworking and energetic than us, right, to come here and do the work that the people deserve. So we're going to keep at it, right? It's not going to go away. We passed a couple of constitutional amendments last week. One of them proposes to change the length of sessions. I know there's a bill on the Senate that would establish a salary commission. I think it was tabled. I'm hoping that it comes back because it is critically important. But like I said, as long as we're sitting in this building, we're going to keep working to make sure that every New Mexican from every walk of life has an opportunity to serve in these positions.
Thinking about Trump's speech this week and comparing it to Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's speech, they kind of couldn't have been more opposite in strategy. The governor came in and was very tightly focused, was really specifically trying not to light a fire under Republicans on the issues that peeve them the most, including guns. And Trump, kind of did the opposite, really going full MAGA, really trying to push everyone's buttons. But some of these things are moving a little bit. There's a bill known as the Gas-Operated Semi-Automatic Firearms Exclusion Act, Go Safe. On this and some other things, are you still pursuing those elements of a public safety agenda that would get more guns off the street and out of the hands of criminals and make them less dangerous?
Look, since 2019, this legislature has done tremendous work on gun safety, from waiting day periods to safe storage to background checks, etc. We've done all of that. We are eagerly awaiting to see what the Senate does on the Go Safe Act, and we'll see if it moves. In comparing the governor's speech to Trump's speech, you see the tale of two, one who's an actual leader, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, and one who is there for just chaos and self-enrichment, and that's Trump. The fact that the governor's speech really was focused on the problems afflicting everyday New Mexicans tells the whole story, right? She is somebody who's committed to working with us, the Democrats, and to working with the Republicans as well, right? Because we take pride, I take a lot of pride in running a floor that is cohesive, that is collaborative, and even when we disagree, we don't have to be disagreeable. We don't have to look and operate and act the way Congress does. We don't have to act in the chaotic ways that Donald Trump acts. We are the grown-ups in the room. We are here to do the job and the work of serving the people and not enriching ourselves or our friends like Trump. So I'm proud of this governor. I'm proud of the position she has taken at the national level. I'm proud that she's leading our state, especially in these terrifying times at the federal level. And I wouldn't want to have anyone else sitting in that office but her to take on this federal administration.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for taking this time with us today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
New Mexico is very unique in this way because we do not have a paid legislature. So a lot of our legislators do rely on the input, the research, and the work that lobbyists do and that they bring to the table. They let them know what bills are going to be really important and really consequential, and help them understand exactly what it is that they are voting on.
That interview with Common Cause New Mexico Policy Director Mason Graham will air in less than 20 minutes. And one more note on Gwyneth's interview with the Speaker. CYFD Secretary Teresa Casados has been vocal in opposing the reforms to her department that passed out of the House. She says they present a conflict of interest for the Attorney General's office and could impede progress her department has already made. A spokesman for Governor Lujan Grisham told the Albuquerque Journal earlier this week that it's too early to say whether she would veto the CYFD bills. Now, in just a moment, we're going to hear from Republican leadership in the House. But first, a bit more background on that paid family leave bill you just heard the Speaker talking about. That measure, House Bill 11, now awaits its fate in the Senate. If approved, the state would establish two funds from which employees could take up to 6 weeks of paid time off for medical-related purposes. Those would include serious health conditions, caring for a loved one, or welcoming a foster child. The bill would also allow up to 12 weeks of paid leave and $3,000 a month for a parent after their child is born or adopted. It's a complicated proposal that hasn't had much luck in previous sessions, and despite its success to this point in 2025, House Republicans still weren't on board, saying it could stifle local entrepreneurs. After gaining just one seat in each chamber the last election, House Minority Leader Gail Armstrong explains to Gwyneth it's just one example of the limitations state Republicans are struggling with as they advocate for bills they say will help smaller businesses.
Representative Armstrong, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
You know, State Republican Chair Amy Barella said this week that New Mexico should be following Trump's lead in terms of spending cuts. But she said that with these party line votes, Democrats are, quote, killing our economy, our education system, our agriculture, and both small and large businesses. Do you agree with what she's saying there?
Oh, you know, there's some things that we can agree with, some things we can disagree with. I'm all about jobs, creating jobs, keeping our young education students here, keeping families together in New Mexico, and growing the economy. Ultimately, we spend a lot of money, but we're not a poor state. We're actually a very rich state. It's how we're spending our money that I could disagree with.
I wanted to ask you about that spending. Republicans in Congress have pledged to cut $2 trillion in spending from the federal budget. President Trump has empowered Elon Musk and Doge to find what they call waste, fraud, and abuse across the federal government, but federal spending is very important to us. Just one example, New Mexico has the highest federal reimbursement rate for Medicaid. It's 83%. Are you concerned about the impact of those cuts on New Mexico and specifically on Medicaid?
Well, New Mexico is a huge Medicaid recipient at the state level. For years, we've been trying to raise that Medicaid reimbursement to keep our doctors here in the state of New Mexico because the reimbursement rate for that was a lot lower. I used to really have huge arguments with former Health Secretary Dr. Scrace, where he always wanted to grow Medicaid. I always wanted to try to help people get off of Medicaid and shrink that, but with a 3-to-1 match, New Mexico, all they see is the federal dollars. We knew this day would possibly come, and so I'm not concerned about it because we're going to help those people that need the help the most. We're going to find a way.
You've sent, lawmakers have sent public safety and behavioral health bills to the governor already. Are you happy with those packages? Are there more things you want to do?
Well, the statement I heard earlier is that was an appetizer. I'm really waiting for the full meal deal. It's been made clear by New Mexicans what is critical to them, and the juvenile justice part of it is critical. And it can't even get a hearing. I finally asked the speaker to help us get that bill heard, and it will be up tomorrow, I believe. But getting a hearing on it, we're late in the game. It's what the governor wants. It's what Sam Bregman wants. It's what New Mexicans want. And we're late to the party.
And the speaker told me earlier today he doesn't like it, right? He says that he thinks the best way to approach the problem that we're having with young people involved in serious crime is through prevention. And you have a different idea. What are you trying to get done?
Well, we need to hold people accountable. You know, humanity does not like to hold people accountable. I don't like to hold my children accountable, but I do. And so when there's a fact, when there's rules and they're broken, the only way to learn from that is accountability. The other part of that is here comes CYFD. Here comes education. I think they're all intermingled. And so until we fix CYFD and the problems that we have there, don't know that we'll fix the juvenile justice, even if we have that information.
I think he sort of said some similar things, right? But do you think that kids deserve a little bit of a break? I mean, considering they probably came from home situations that were difficult. We do have a lot of data showing if you put them behind bars, you're kind of training them to be better criminals. Is there any value in that treatment and prevention?
Well, just to be quite honest and quite frank, this administration has had 6 years to fix CYFD. And I've introduced bills every single year, the same bills that I've introduced this year that are actually now passing. And so, of course, I believe kids deserve I believe anyone deserves a second chance. I really do. People can be rehabilitated. Children make mistakes. Children have issues. But in the end, we've got to fix CYFD. We've got to fix these families. We've got to get them the help that they need and we've got to mandate the help. Right now, we don't mandate the help. It's like, okay, you broke the rules. Here's some options. Okay, thanks for the options. No, I'm not going to take them. And no one checks on it. Mm-hmm. And babies are dying. And kids are dying. And that's not okay.
Let me stay on the federal issue for a minute here. President Trump has made some really aggressive moves on tariffs. You have a long background in small business, a lot of experience there, and you have the perspective of someone who has built small business and into big business, right? So what do you think the impact will be on consumers of some of these actions happening at the federal level? And has the legislature done enough to try and push back on inflation problems, potential tariff spikes in costs? Have you done enough on affordability?
Well, honestly, at the state level, we're actually raising taxes. We want to raise taxes. We want to charge you more to do business in the state of New Mexico. We're passing the Paid Family Medical Leave Act. Hasn't passed completely yet. We're imposing a tax on one industry in the state of New Mexico. We are not business friendly. We put up barriers. We put up red tape. We trick businesses into coming here by dangling a carrot. They're not really looking at the backside of the regulation part of New Mexico that actually hurts business in New Mexico. The tariffs that are at the federal level, I'm not in charge at the federal level. I don't have a vote at the federal level, but I believe in treating people the way they treat you. If they're going to impose a tariff, we're going to impose a tariff. I'm okay with that. And I think we will see some sort of inflation, no more than we saw during COVID when the whole state was shut down.
So the speaker said that, smaller businesses are exempt from the Paid Family Medical Leave Act as it is right now. And that for bigger businesses with more than 5 employees, he's like, it's like $30 a year. And it's not that big of a deal.
The problem comes when you're trying to replace that employee to do the job while that employee is off. When you're in a service industry, when you're in a restaurant industry, any kind of service industry, any kind of high-paying job, geophysicist, how do you replace that? That's where the cost comes in. The tax is not that big of a tax, and it is a tax. It's a payroll deduction, which is a tax. A benefit is when you can cash that out. You can't cash this out. And everyone has to pay in. And the employers will be paying in for, I believe, a year, maybe 6 months or a year before the employee starts paying in. The other problem I have with it is there is no guidelines on how are they going to, how's the reporting, who's managing it, who decides if you have a good enough paid family medical leave already implemented into your business. How are you exempt? Mm-hmm. So, and it's also the reporting part of it. You're going to have to hire more people to do the reporting part of it. And it's just another mandate on business. We believe, we as Republicans, myself as an individual, believe in taking care of their employees. We love our employees. We cherish our employees. We want to be able to sit down with our employee and say, how can I help you? What do you need from me? Let's work it out. Not a problem. Let's work it out.
And maybe TLC Plumbing has the best employee benefits in the state, but the argument is that there are a lot of other employees who don't have those. Business owners who aren't as generous, who maybe don't have that same ability. Shouldn't they be entitled to some of those similar benefits?
How about mentorship instead of mandate? How about going to some of those companies and saying, how did you do this? How do you make this work? Give us insight. But no, we're just going to mandate instead.
So we've got just a little bit more than 2 weeks left. What is the best case scenario from your perspective as the minority floor leader of the House Republicans? How are you going to get to the closest to win that you think you can?
Well, honestly, we would love to see our bills being heard in committee. That's a win for us. Right now, they're getting rolled to the bottom. Every Republican bill gets rolled to the bottom, and it's not fair. I'm about fairness. I want fairness. A win for us would be to stop some of the major taxing on the oil and gas industry. We produce some of the cleanest energy in the United States, not just in New Mexico, in the United States. And we are targeting an industry that is that provides for majority of our budget. A win for us would be to see the juvenile justice package come forward. A really big win is to help CYFD get fixed and stop babies from dying in the state of New Mexico. Have a pipeline of who does what, when, why, and where. Have that more spelled out. And of course, save more money. That would be a big one for us, but I think the budget's already passed over to the House for sure, so I don't think that's something that's going to be happening anytime soon.
Thank you so much for talking to us today.
You bet.
I'm concerned about the budget. We have oil and gas right now, and these folks that don't want to acknowledge that, I feel for them. But the fact of it is, we're only getting these trust funds and things because the oil and gas is treating us very well. And so, everybody says, well, it's going to end, we're going to have to make adjustments. Well, that's fine. Let's plan for that future. Let's not just spend all of this money as it's coming in. Let's sock it away and have it for a rainy day.
That look at the wrangling over the state budget is coming up in less than 20 minutes. According to Common Cause New Mexico, lawmakers spend about 20 hours a week attending to unpaid legislative responsibilities. And that's when they're not in session in Santa Fe. Most of them have full-time jobs on top of all that lawmaking. Earlier this week, senior producer Lou DeVizio had a moment to speak with Common Cause New Mexico Policy Director Mason Graham about a handful of good government reforms his organization wants to see. Graham talks about the existing financial hurdles that keep people from entering state politics, and he tells us why he believes a salaried legislature would open up the roundhouse to a broader swath of New Mexicans.
Mason Graham, thank you so much for joining me on New Mexico in Focus.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Now, we're going to talk about modernizing the legislature today. It's something we've been following for years. I know I've spoken with you before on the show about this. But can you start by laying out the mission of your group, Common Cause New Mexico, and how modernization efforts fit into it?
So with Common Cause New Mexico, we've always been focused on government accountability, transparency, and overall improving the structure of government so that it better serves the people. So with modernizing, what we're really talking about is creating a more efficient process of legislating and governing that somewhat aligns with what other states do. So, as many know, here in New Mexico, we have a very short session. For a period of time, legislators do not have their own staff member, and they are essentially all volunteers, so they don't receive any compensation. So, in this current legislative session, we've been working on a Senate joint resolution that would have created an independent commission that would have the ability to set and limit legislator salaries. It's been something that's brought up many times in the past, even over the last several decades. It's a constitutional amendment, so it would go before the voters. But really, the goal is to try to create a legislature that is capable. You know, many of our legislators have full-time jobs. We're called a citizen-led legislature for that reason. So when they are not in session, or even some of them during session, they're working that full-time job as well. And then outside of session, there's been some studies that show that, you know, our state representatives and our state senators spend about 20 hours a week doing legislative responsibilities, and all of that goes unpaid. In addition, you know, there is a financial barrier to even wanting to be a legislator or somebody who comes from a community, you know, that has a lot of challenges, and they say, you know, I want to be somebody who can serve my people in this way. Once they realize that there's no compensation, you know, they may be barred from that opportunity. So we think that creating this independent salary commission would open up opportunities for people who want to serve, and then overall relieve some of that financial burden on some of our legislators.
Okay. Now you talk about that resolution to create the citizen commission that would then figure out what paying lawmakers would look like. What are the chances right now that that passes? Are you thinking that it's positive at this point?
Well, things aren't very positive, but I'll keep a positive spin on it.
Okay.
So it was introduced early. It was Senate Joint Resolution 1. So we started in the Senate for this constitutional amendment that would create the Independent Salary Commission. It did get 2 committee hearings, and in that second hearing, it actually landed on a tie vote, 5-5, with actually some Democrats siding with the Republicans voting no against it.
All right. And I just want to remind our viewers and listeners that we're taping this on Tuesday. So while we're here, and just so viewers who might be less familiar with this general debate, not just paying lawmakers, the push to modernize something very much implies that the thing that is being modernized is antiquated. How should folks think about that dynamic when it comes to the New Mexico legislature? Are we in 2025 antiquated?
I would say so, absolutely. And I think that is reflected by some of the biggest challenges in our state. You know, every session we go in with a lot of things on our mind, particularly the rate of crime, poverty, the rising issues in regards to climate change. And our legislators are really pressed for time to bring those issues and solutions to the table during session. But like I mentioned before, outside of session, they're not being compensated for any of the work that they do. So the research, the working with organizations, finding the solutions, traveling to other places like conferences where they can hear from some of their other colleague legislators in other states, they're not being compensated for. So only those who have the financial stability to take those opportunities are doing so. And some of the others, you know, may have to put some of these legislative responsibilities to the wayside, not holding, constituent services and holding town hall meetings, and then the lead up to legislative session as well. There's a lot of challenges for citizen-led legislature here in New Mexico, and we're not the only ones, but we are the only ones that go uncompensated. That, in addition to our short session length, one of them being entirely controlled by the call of the governor, I believe it really puts us behind on finding some of these real solutions, and modernizing may be a way to just give them a little bit of a push to really have more capacity as a legislator.
You've kind of laid it out a little bit, but if lawmakers were to be paid, obviously that's a ways down the line, even if this commission is approved, how might that change the makeup of the legislature? Is there any concern that we might create an environment where career politicians are governing us and they aren't as tied into the community?
Well, I'd argue that we already have career politicians, and many of our legislators right now have served for decades. I think the most recent legislator that has stepped down served for about like 40 years or so. And the people who are able to do that are those that are financially stable. They're very resourceful. They're in a district that may have some insulation as far as challenges to their incumbency. So they don't have to worry about things like being challenged or competition in their district. They don't have to worry about the financial burden on them if they go to session every year and the work that they do. And a lot of them also are retired, so they don't have an additional job that they need to keep up with. So all of those things combined allow them to be a quote unquote career politician, as in the work that they do is entirely revolves around being a legislator or being in politics. That is kind of a dirty word, but it's not a bad thing to have somebody who has the experience, the institutional knowledge, and knows how to govern and knows how to administrate and knows how to be a legislator, pass good laws and strike down ones that are bad. We would love to see legislators not only just stay in their seat, but to gain that institutional knowledge over time. Unfortunately, right now, with the fact that they are an unpaid legislature, many legislators are coming in serving 1 or 2 terms and saying, this isn't sustainable for me. This isn't sustainable for my family. There's a big burden on myself and my loved ones, and they have to balance whether or not doing this role as a legislator is worth it. And unfortunately, that's the reality. It really shouldn't be. Someone shouldn't have to choose between serving their state and serving their community and also taking care of their family, because they can do those things in other avenues. But unfortunately, as it is right now, if you want to be a legislator, you do have to have some of those things like, good wealth or financial stability and semi-flexible job that allows you to go up to the legislature for 30 days or 60 days. Right. So those things don't always come available to everybody, and we think that they should.
Now, the influence of lobbying in the legislature has been a topic of interest for us on the show for a while now. Lobbying exists in every hall of government in this country. We know that. But how is it different in New Mexico, given we have a citizen-led legislature?
So lobbying is no stranger to common cause. That's kind of how we started up, was to play the role of the citizen lobbyist amongst all of these private interest groups. New Mexico is very unique in this way because we do not have a paid legislature. So a lot of our legislators do rely on the input, the research, and the work that lobbyists do and that they bring to the table. They let them know what bills are going to be really important and really consequential, and help them understand exactly what it is that they are voting on. Some of our lobbyists, do have private interests from other groups like, oil and gas or the NRA or education. There's a large spectrum of the types of lobbyists. But I think what is important for people to know is that when someone is doing lobbying activities, it's not always in the interest of a private group, but there is also public interest as well, which is some of the work that we do at Common Cause to speak on behalf of the public interest. And because our legislators are very pressed for time in and outside of the legislature, groups and lobbyists can come together and kind of fill in those gaps.
Now, you're also backing a bill that would allow voters who aren't registered with a major party the opportunity to vote in primary elections. That's Senate Bill 16. It passed its first House committee on Monday. That would be March 2nd. What's the reasoning behind that idea?
So in New Mexico, the largest political party is actually not a political party at all. It's the decline of state voters. That number is actually growing a lot in recent years. Here in New Mexico, I believe it's about 30% of registered voters are decline of state, and they're completely barred from primary elections that are only Republican or Democrat. Now, they do end up going to the general election and voting on one of these candidates anyway, but in that primary election, there's quite a bit of consequence for, who people are voting for, who it is that they see has is carrying their values, and if they are going to be on that general election ticket, whether or not they want to vote for them. So because we are in a closed primary system, only if you are a registered Democrat or if you're a registered Republican, you have the ability to vote for those primary candidates. Luckily, in New Mexico, we kind of have a half step, which allows you to same day register for either the Democrat or the Republican Party to receive that party's primary ticket. What Senate Bill 16 seeks to do is kind of just remove that half step and allow folks to receive the ballot of their choosing. We don't have third-party candidates, obviously, during primary elections. So that's why it's called a semi-open primary. But really just allowing for more voters to come out during primary elections and choosing how they want to be represented in the general.
Now, the assumption is this would boost primary turnout. Is there data to support this? Would this boost primary turnout?
I believe there is data. I mean, we can just look at the number of voters who are declined to state. Now, they do show up for the same day registration, but the process is a little bit complicated. You do have to bring the materials that you need in order to register to vote that day. So sometimes if you show up and then you don't have the materials, you can get deterred and maybe not register to vote because you're not prepared. Or in other cases, you don't want to identify with the political party just based off of your morals or your standing point and your viewpoint. So that can also bar people from voting. So overall, we think if we open up the elections, the primary elections to everybody, whether you're declined to state or not, you'll be able to show up and just choose the candidate based off of what you believe in.
Now, I want to wrap up here with the modernization push that we've been following for a while that came through last year when the Legislative Council approved a measure to allow lawmakers a paid staffer. Have you talked to legislators in this session about how that's been working?
Yes, I have. And before the session, I was able to work with quite a few of the new staff members for legislators. From what I understand, it has been very helpful, even in just administrative responsibilities, answering emails, setting up meetings, taking calls, and allowing legislators to have a little bit of breathing room to do some of this important research, and then also be more structured and organized on when they are getting ready for session, when they're outside of session and they need to do constituent services. You know, legislators have a big role in our state. It's not just passing laws. You know, they can help with things like your passport, or if things are happening in your community that needs attention. You know, folks do reach out to their legislators often. And when I talk with our state representatives and our state senators, they tell me, you know, that I get thousands of emails, I get hundreds of calls, and I can't take them all. So I know from my experience talking with our legislators is that this staff person has been a very big help for them, even especially when they're not able to physically be there, or if they're not able to be available, the staff person could step in and help them, you know, take some of that weight off of their shoulders.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mason Graham. Appreciate you being on New Mexico in Focus.
Yeah, thanks again.
Many thanks to Lou and to Mason Graham. You can listen to a longer version of their conversation on the New Mexico in Focus podcast. In this next segment, Gwyneth checks in with George Munoz, a Democrat who chairs the powerful Senate Finance Committee, and Republican Senator Steve Lanier, to talk about the budget more broadly and how state lawmakers are setting the state up for potential cuts in federal funding.
Senator, we were just talking to Speaker Martinez about President Trump's speech that he made this week and how well the legislature is preparing for more cuts from the Trump administration, more cuts in federal programs, federal employees. Have you done enough to prepare for this?
We're just starting to prepare for that. The president made some comments, and so we don't know what those are going to look like. I don't believe that Medicaid will get cut. I was at a fiscal leaders meeting over the summer. All chairs of finance committees across the state, Republicans, Democrats, number one issue across the United States for them. And we're all going to stand strong. We can't bear those cuts in Medicaid. That's the highest cost to the state. That's the reason we're creating the Medicaid Trust Fund this year, is because in our state budget, the highest cost to the state budget is Medicare.
We always talk about the cycle of boom and bust in the oil and gas industry. You guys have had so much money the past few years, just boom, boom, boom. Are you worried about the double barrel attack that's going to come from the Trump administration on spending and the bust that we know is going to come in oil and gas?
Well, in New Mexico, we've set ourselves up to overcome that. For the last 2 years as chair of LFC, we've set New Mexico up and said, let's take Mound money, invest it. So by 2030, our revenues, investment revenues, will equal what we get in oil and gas. And so we smooth that. It's going to take a little time. The market's a little down today, but over time, New Mexico has set itself up not to be dependent on oil and gas. And that's a big, bold move. You have to control spending. We did that with capital outlay. So we've set New Mexico up. Let's take the billions of dollars we're receiving. Let's put them in places where we can have investments. Let's generate revenue, and let's not be that dependent on oil and gas, because it's going to happen at some point.
But what if it happens sooner rather than later? You just said it's going to take some time for these moves to really get moving.
We have put in place triggers and funds all over the place to hold us harmless. We know that with our 30% reserves right now, if we had to cut to Medicaid and they cut Medicaid pretty much to the bone, that's about $3 billion. That would be a $6 million, 6-month stint. That's all we would have. So it would take cost savings in agencies. It would take a multiple of things to hold us harmless. And so we think if New Mexico sees a slight downturn or additional costs, we can ride those out for 3 to 5 years. Doing the right things across the board. That's some cutting, sanding of agencies, pulling from our funds, pulling from other places.
And this is how it used to be. You've been here in these years when you're clawing back and sanding. All of this means taking money that you've given to someone back. Could you do more now to prevent any of that?
I mean, we're preparing to do that, right? We're looking at scenarios. If it's a cut of $500 million or less, where do we go first? What does that look like? We're looking at a scenario if it's $1 billion or more. What does that look like? And so we're building those scenarios, preparing for what might come. But we don't know the unknown. And so as we move forward, you can prepare, but you don't know what's going to happen. And so until you know what has happened, we can come in and say, here's our preparedness for this. But we're not going to be reactive to what the president is doing right now. I think a lot of it is a lot of talk and chatter. A lot of it will be hard for him to get through Congress. A lot of it, with the Senate reconciliation, it'll be hard too. We know it's going to be late October, maybe before they reconcile the budget. And so we got a little bit of time, and so we can prepare as that goes forward.
Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senator Lanier, I want to talk to you about President Trump this week addressed a joint session of Congress. What do you think of his early aggressive moves to cut government spending?
Well, I think it's a problem a lot of politicians have. If you don't get on the ground and get your stuff moving forward right away, then you're already going backwards. The American people elected him to do a job, and he's doing that job. And the time frame that it takes sometimes might be different for different folks, but it's refreshing to have somebody that's going to move quickly and fast. We're getting results daily.
I think some of those results have been a little bit unexpected. Are you concerned about the impact on New Mexico's economy, given how much government presence we have here, how much the state depends on government contracts and money?
Yeah, I mean, it's concerning because it's coming very fast, and that money is getting raked back in, and we knew he's doing exactly what he told us he was going to do, and our problem was I don't think we believed him. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of things in Santa Fe that we could follow his lead and start, cutting back and repositioning ourselves for the future instead of just living year by year.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. The House just passed the largest ever budget, $10.8 billion. It's a 6% increase over last year. We just talked to Senator Munoz a little bit about that. He talked, as many Democrats have so far this session, about the steps that the legislature has made to put that money in trust funds and make it future money. Are you concerned about government cuts and the budget being so big?
I'm concerned about the budget being big. I'm a conservative, and I just I want to make sure we have oil and gas right now, and these folks that don't want to acknowledge that, I feel for them. But the fact of it is, we're only getting these trust funds and things because the oil and gas is treating us very well. And so, everybody says, well, it's going to end, we're going to have to make adjustments. Well, that's fine. Let's plan for that future. Let's not just spend all of this money as it's coming in. Let's sock it away and have it for a rainy day.
So what do you like about the budget that the House sent over, and what are you hoping to change before it goes to the governor?
Well, we're just getting into it, so we're just kind of starting those negotiations. You got to keep in mind that there's 4 factions involved. You have the governor's office, you have LFC, you have the House, and you have the Senate. And so trying to get all of those groups together to agree on an amount when everybody has their own personal preferences, it becomes a very tough negotiation, I should say. But we're ready.
Do you have any ideas of things that you want to cut or places that you feel like we need to trim, or?
We don't have enough time in this interview for all the things I would like to trim, but there's some very large ticket items out there that we want to be careful with. And so, one of them is economic development. We're spending a lot of money on economic development. Is it feasible? Fine. If it's not, all of you drove on roads to get here. What are we doing in the Department of Transportation? So it's very important that we use that money wisely. We can't just say we got all this money, let's throw everything into CYFD, early childhood development. We can't just focus on one thing. We've got to spread it out through the whole state.
Are you comfortable with the CYFD reforms that the House has been working on?
I believe so. I think they're working the right direction. Now, is it going to be a perfect solution? We know that's not going to happen. Being a former educator, I tend to kind of drift towards the kids anyway, and so that's something that's going to be an ongoing process and work to be done. Even after this governor leaves office, it's still going to be something that's very important.
Paid family medical leave.
Totally against. I'm a small business owner. I work for Taco Bell in Farmington, New Mexico, and it will just devastate what we're trying to do. I understand that employers, some of them out there may not be as flexible as we are with time off, but for example, Taco Bell, if we just take Taco Bell, we have 150 employees. Most of those employees can't really afford anything out of their paycheck at the time. And I don't care what anybody says, it's a tax. If you're charging me money and I don't get to say yes or no, that's a tax.
Senator, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thanks to Gwyneth and all those lawmakers who spoke to us this week. And thanks as well to Mason Graham of Common Cause. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus is provided by viewers like you.